All we need is a little understanding. Walk a mile in their shoes. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life. And if we keep our hearts open-minded, we'll enjoy this wild ride called life.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Annette, the host of the Truths We Hide podcast, and I'm excited today because I've never met anybody who wrote fantasy books. So I can't wait for you to listen to Russell Nohelty's story and then really just dig into some crap that really happens in your life and how to prepare for it and how to deal with it after the fact and make it into a positive thing. So Russell, thank you so much for reaching out and thank you so much for being on here today.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to mention, first off, you are a writer, author of fantasy books, as mentioned, and one of them that the title is intriguing, and Death Followed Behind Her, that you can find on Amazon. I will put those in the show notes, but tell us a little bit about how you got started into writing that, and then, of course, the things that we don't prepare for, such as the no's on the work that we submit.
Sure. So I started writing heavily in about 2008. I had gotten in a car accident and I could no longer direct or shoot. I was doing movies and TV, so I was pretty much laid up in a neck brace for 6 months. And so the only thing I could really do was write. And that's where I really found my passion for it. You know, I directed movies and television shows and executive produced a television network for a couple of years. And it was all fun, but like you had to rely on other people. So what I really liked about writing was that it was just you and a page. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty much the only job in movies and TV that didn't require other people's permission to do it. So yeah, I moved to LA in 2008 and I started trying to work in movies and TV and as a screenwriter, and it didn't really work out for me. And then in 2010, my manager introduced me to comics and I loved it. And I started writing comics. So I wrote Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter and Katrina Hates the Dead. And we produced both of those. And meanwhile, I was writing novels as well. So I wrote a book called Gumshoes, The Case of Madison's Father, one called Sorry for Existing, one called My Father Didn't Kill Himself. And then we started releasing them in 2014 through my company, Wannabe Press. Before then, I had a bunch of publishing deals that didn't work out. So, you talked about the no's, but even worse than the no's are the yeses, because usually those yeses come with a whole lot of, I don't want to say incompetence because I don't want someone listening to think that I think they're an incompetent publisher, but for my work, they were not doing it justice. So they would release it late. They'd only release it in one platform at a time. And then they would blame me for the problems in their publishing slate. So I said, if I don't know if I can be a good publisher, but I can at least be a bad publisher. And so I bought back all the rights to my work and I started publishing it myself. And we had a small hit with my book, Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter, and then a much bigger hit with my book, Katrina Hates the Dead. And since then, since 2015, I've basically been touring the country, selling my books at conventions and doing Kickstarter.
Wow.
So that's how sort of the start.
That's, yeah, so I'm listening, I'm sitting here listening, and it's terrifying for those out there who want to, publish their creative side, but there's always going to be something that goes along with it. Somebody who doesn't market it the way that it should be, or not even, or just giving you that it's not good enough kind of feeling when you know deep in your soul that this is what you want. So you have to take back those rights, because I've been learning a lot about independent publishers, traditional publishers, and all that. And it's all really scary because I know how I want my story to be told. So I have to make sure that I stand up for it, even though there's that excitement. But like you said, you get a yes, but it doesn't always turn out the way that you are hoping for.
Yeah, you learn that as you become, or as you start growing as a writer and start like getting more and more acclaim. It's just like uh no's are actually the best word you can hear, because like you know that that's not a good fit. A yes is really, really scary, because now you have to trust that someone's going to do your work justice, put money behind it, release it when they say they're going to release it, that the editor is going to be a good editor. You know, when you're doing it yourself, I can hire whatever editor I want. Like I have, I've been working with my editor for 15, 20 books now. And you know, my proofreader, pretty much 15 to 20 books as well. And I just know that they are going to do justice by the work. And like starting a new editor or starting a new publishing company or starting anything like that, it means that you have to have a lot of trust. And when usually what happens is even when I say yes, it ends up not working out very well. I'll work on an anthology project, or I'll work on some small project for them, because I always like to test it out small. It just ends up not being a good fit. A lot of times in comics, the way that you print stuff is really important. And so I'll get the comps back of the book, and it will just like look like trash, or my work will not be featured. It'll be like in the middle, or, you know, in a position that is not really indicative of a good flow to the story. And it's just really disheartening. It's not heartbreaking. It's just disheartening. It used to be heartbreaking. It's not so much heartbreaking now. It's just disheartening. So yeah, I mean, you have so much more control when you are the person who puts the work out. Of course, then it all comes down to you and your taste. So, you know, you have to really, really, really trust your taste and hone your taste and hone the craft, because it's you. The people are buying you. Like, you're basically the publisher and the editor. So I have so many fans now that buy just my work on the fact that I wrote it. And they'll buy anthologies, and they'll buy work that I suggest just on my suggestion alone, because they trust my taste. And it's wonderful, but it takes a long time to get there. Like, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of self-reflection to be able to be your own publisher, basically, and say, and there's a lot of work that I have that I pitch to myself, or I look at and I sit with, and I have to say, like, no, that's not good enough, or that's not a good enough project, or that's not something that Wannabe Press should be putting out, or Wannabe Press should be focusing on. And, you know, it takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that.
So how did you keep doing that? How did you keep showing up every day and staying motivated to continue to write? And you know, if you guys can't see it, but you can see it on his website, the books behind him, they're really creative. I'm just like, where did you come up with these names, and how did you, it's just intriguing. I love it. But how did you keep staying motivated to do it?
Well, I think one of the things that early writers should think about is that if you write one book and then put one book out, there's no head of steam that you're putting together. So what was nice about my work in retrospect is I had several novels. I had several graphic novels already written. I had a couple of comic books that I already put out before I ever started releasing. So, you know, there was a year of releasing before I would like catch up to where I was at the beginning. So I knew that even if things went bad, I still had the next launch and the next launch and the next launch and the next launch and the next launch, to be able to continue working on this project and to work on the releasing. So often people think of one book, and it's really like your career is more than one book. It's more than one series. It's more than 10 books. It's 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 100, 200, 400 books, whatever you're going to put out during the course of your career. And so often writers think about that first book or one book, and that's the one that's going to break them. But 99.9% of writers, before they actually have any success, have written close to 20 novels. So, back catalog work is so important. And I was very lucky to be able to have basically 1 or 2 books come out and be able to sustain myself on them. But I can tell you that every book I put out makes my catalog more and more robust, makes someone finding me have more and more work that they can look at in order to become a fan of mine. If you just bought all of my books in ebook form, there'd be something like $120 of stuff right now, as opposed to when I first started, it was $10 or $15 or $20. And so the more work you put out, the sort of more robust your catalog becomes, and just the better writer you get to be. However good a writer you are now, you're going to be way better in 20 books. And I feel like I just maybe 2 years ago, after writing for a decade, finally felt like I had a series that was just absolutely incredible, and it's not even out yet. But it took so much fine tuning and working and honing my craft and figuring out what genre I wanted to write and honing my voice. And this is someone who's been a professional writer since 2015, and I still have been felt like I only just now found sort of the thing that I want to say and the thing that I want to do. So, I think, to go back to your question about showing up, it's never been a problem for me because I could not show up. I always tell people that books are the absolute worst business to get into. They're low margin. They take forever to put together. They cost a ton. There's tons of competition that are driving the price down. And the expectation is that your books are going to be cheap or free. So it's a miserable business model, and you should avoid it at all costs if you can. The only people that should really do it are people that can't not do it, because there are, I run multiple other businesses. I have a Verizon dealership. I run a training academy, and both of those businesses are, I sell one thing and I make $500, $1,000. I sell one book and I make $5, $10 maybe in profit. So it's a numbers game, it's a volume game, and it's something you really have to love. And so what would happen was my fire would burn out a lot. I've burnt out many times, but it would always come back. And until the point that I just developed the habit. Jerry Seinfeld has this great story where he's where how he developed the habit was he got a calendar. And every time he'd write a joke, he would write an X through it. So all he had to do was write one joke a day. And after a month, 2 months, it became about not breaking the streak of X's. And so sometimes you just have to kind of trick your brain and do a little bit at a time, and then train yourself up and train yourself up and train yourself up. And, if you can write 1,000 words a day, in 2 months, you'll have a book pretty much, and at least the first draft of a book. And then in another month or two, you could edit that book and then edit it again and edit it again. And, most of my career until about 2018, it took me a year to write a book. It wasn't until 2018 that I really started to be able to write a lot more than one book a year. And now I've trained myself to write 5,000 words a day. But, I was a professional writer for years, writing 1,000 words a day, and then training myself up to do more. Until 2017, I was making well below 6 figures a year, and now I'm a 6-figure author. But that took years of buildup and practice and not being able to do anything else, literally unable to put money into my other companies because all I want to do is write.
Wow. I do appreciate you saying that you have to love it. And I think that applies to everything. You can't just if you do it for the wrong reasons, you're not going to give it your best effort, and you're not going to produce the quality of work that you were hoping for. So especially as a writer, you have to want it. You have to love it. You have to.
Well, yeah. So look, I make courses. I love making courses, but it's not my passion of making courses, but you make $500, $1,000 every time you sell a course. So you can do that dispassionately. Like there's a legitimate business model behind making making courses or selling one-on-one services, or selling cars. You can do that, and you could just buy a company that like produces certain things, and like you don't have to be passionate about that widget to like make it successful, because there's either a huge market for that widget, or there's a need for that widget, or that widget has a huge profit margin, so you don't need like that many people. But specifically with creative projects, books, music, art, things that are coming from your heart, and things that there's just like a massive amount of people who are trying to get in, and it's constantly driving the price down of what people are willing to pay, or what people are willing to pay to hire you. I think those are the jobs that you absolutely have to have the passion for, because there's no money. Like even hugely successful authors like are making a fraction of what a hugely successful person would make in another industry. I mean, I know 7-figure authors, and the amount of work and energy they put in, they'd be making 8 figures, 9 figures in another company, in another kind of industry, but like they are making a lot of good money. Like they're making good money. This is not to like knock like 7 figures, obviously, but if they were putting that energy into, I don't know, building solar panels or something, they would be billionaires probably, or like just making money hand over fist. So it really comes down in certain industries to like the passion. And one of the reasons I think that the creators of those industries, whether it's music or books or a film, are so collaborative a lot of times, is because once you get to a certain level, you just realize that, everyone who's made it to that level is as crazy as you. Or it's like, again, I run other companies. I don't think that people that run other Verizon dealerships are particularly like excited about phones. Maybe they are. I don't know. Like, I'm not excited about phones. Like, I could care. I've had my same phone for like, I don't know, 2015, probably, maybe earlier than that. But like, it still makes me money. So I like keep the company. I don't think that like I could do the writing part of it with the amount of enthusiasm I have for phones, because there's so much less money in books on a per sale basis than there is on phones or courses or one-on-one consulting or any of that stuff.
Right.
I've got friends who own car dealerships and dry cleaners, and I can't believe that like they have a deep passion for cleaning cars. I just can't do it. Like I've never even heard them talk about like cleaning cars. They just happen to own that kind of company. I mean, auto mechanics are a different story, but like I'm saying, like, does anyone have a deep passion for like detailing cars so much like they would make it their like life's work? I don't know, maybe, but like no one that I've met. But everybody who I've met who's a publisher or an author has a deep-seated love for publishing. Maybe not nonfiction authors, because a lot of times they're just using that as a calling card to like sell like their other services. But for everyone who writes fiction books and publishes fiction books, and everyone who publishes nonfiction books that I know, like they are obsessed with it. They can't not do anything. And we often talk about like how if we just had like an ounce of sense, we would like be doing something else, but we literally can't do it. And I think that, that's what it takes. Like, because you're not going to make any money for a long time writing books, probably. Like I've got friends who've written 20, 30, 40 novels, and they're good books, and they market them and they barely make any money. Most of them still, most people that write books still have day jobs. I don't have a day job, but that's only because I've managed to like cobble together 20, 30 different things to like make a living on it. Right. So yeah, it's specifically, I'm not saying that I think people have a passion for entrepreneurship when they're opening like car dealerships or dry cleaners or the other things. Like I think they're passionate about that part of it. But when you're writing books, you really, I think, have to be passionate about the subject matter that you're writing in, and and like the work that you're doing in order to have a chance to stand out. Because the other thing is, people like people will go to your gas station even if you hate gas stations, like because it's there. It's like, oh, I need gas, and look, there's a gas station, so I'm going to go to this gas station, right? But like, if you don't have passion for the books, no one's ever going to read it. Like, you know, you sell so many books on passion alone and on who you are and like your point of view, as opposed to, you know, like I said, gas stations or car dealerships or something. Like I don't care if like you love gas. I just care that the gas is there and that it is like in the correct denomination and that I will be able to use it to get from one place to another.
Right. Oh, that makes sense. Tell us about, so in this writing career, you've had some bad book launches that got you into that dark place of being suicidal. I know that's such a hard topic to talk about, but how did you get through? What got you to that place, and how did you get through it? And how did you recover and continue to write after going through all of that?
Yeah, so from 2017 to 2018, I had some pretty good book launches. You know, I was at the top of my game, I would say. Like, I was doing shows, I was making good money. I had in 17, 18, and even 19 at the end of the year. But from 17 and 18, we were making like, you know, $120,000, $150,000 a year. And it was, you know, it was quite good. I was pretty pleased with myself. And in 2017, I had begun developing my most popular book, Katrina Hates the Dead, and my second most popular graphic novel, Pixie Dust, into a universe in and of itself, so that they were going to have these extra books. And so I spent about a year and a half and about $15,000 building out this universe and writing something like 20 novels. And so I started releasing those books in early 2019, just expecting that I was going to at least break even. And from March to June of 2019, I think I released 8 books, and I made $2,000 out of that $20,000 or $15,000 that I put into this book universe. And it was quite bad. It was the place that one day in June, my wife came home and I was like, I'm glad we don't have a gun, because I would kill myself today for sure, like 100%, like no doubt. And so I'm not one to not make a plan or to like rest on my laurels. So I went back to my catalog, and I looked at the books that we had the most success with over the years, and I put the 2 most popular books that I had back into production. So Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, the second volume of the second volume of Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter, our most beloved graphic novel, and then I decided I was going to relaunch all of these books, all of the books that I had launched so poorly. Actually, half of the universe hadn't launched yet, so I was going to not launch those and take the all 12 books, like rebrand them, reimagine them, and then relaunch them. And I was going to do this over the course of 3 Kickstarters. Kickstarter is the crowdfunding platform of choice for me. I'd raised at the time like $120,000 on Kickstarter. Now I've raised over $180,000 on Kickstarter. So, and we have one more Kickstarter this year. So I hope we're going to raise upwards of $200,000 after this year on Kickstarter. So the first one up was Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter. This is a book that people had been asking me for more of for years. It's about a mental patient that escapes an asylum and becomes a monster hunter, but doesn't know if he's killing monsters, humans, or it's all in his head the whole time. So it's drawn by a great Argentinian artist named Renzo Podesta, who's helped other comic creators move on to like wonderful careers. And it's a book that is so weird and out there that like the fans have been asking me for more. But I was in a really bad place when I wrote Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, probably the lowest point in my whole career. And so I had to reimagine how I would even write that series from a place of more hope and less hopelessness, which is where the first series came from. And so I went to my fans and I said, look, here's the deal. You clearly don't like these novels for some reason. I don't know. So I'm going to, I'll make you a deal. If you can help me reprint volume 1 of Ichabod Jones Monster Hunter, because it's out of print now, and do the 5th issue, like make the 5th issue, I will do what I can do to do volume 2 and volume 3. So I was like, if we can fund this Kickstarter, I promise you I will go volume 2 and volume 3 at least. And so we went back, but it was like $15,666 we had to raise in order to break even. So it was like not insurmountable. It was not insurmountable, but doing a $15,000 launch in a single issue of comic is a pretty big launch. And so we were able to raise over $16,000 for that launch. And so June, I was in the worst place of my career. September, we had come back and I had gone from raising like $2,000 that whole year up to raising 10 times more than that, basically. And so in one book. And then, so that was step 1. Step 2 was I took all of those books that launched so poorly and I rebranded them. Instead of having 12 books, I made them into 4-book collections. You mentioned the first one, And Death Followed Behind Her. The second one is And Doom Followed Behind Her. The third one, And Hell Followed Behind Her. And the fourth one, And Ruin Followed Behind Her. And since then, I've written the 5th book, And Conquest Followed Behind Her. And the 6th and next to final book, and Chaos Followed Behind Her. And then the final one I'll be writing next, which is And Destruction Followed Behind Her, I think is the title of it. I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to land on it, but it will be And Something Followed Behind Her. And those books, with new covers, rebranded into 4 books instead of 12. We launched that in January and ended up raising $9,900 for that launch. So we went from basically having had no success with the God's Verse to breaking even and even making a little bit of a profit, enough of a profit to fund the 5th volume, the 5th book, and give me the hope, not hope, but the drive to do a 5th and a 6th and 7th book before I finally like give the God's Verse and like I'll give the God's Verse, like maybe not up, but like I'm not going to be doing the God's Verse for a little bit after that. Because I think it's had this like day in the sun. And then step 3 was our most popular comic anthology project, Cthulhu is Hard to Spell. I put the 2nd volume into production, and then in March we put that into Kickstarter and we raised $31,000 for that book. And so from just those 3 launches, I went from raising $2,000 over the course of like 8 launches to $50,000 or more over the course of 3 launches. And then we actually just went back to Kickstarter in June and did another book launch, and we raised $9,500 for 4 books that I had literally never launched before. It's still been our best. People had never seen it before, and I raised $9,500 for those books. And yeah, they also ended up breaking even on their production costs at launch. So now we're going to launch those, and I have another one coming up in September for the Ichabod Jones Volume 2 that I already said I was going to make, and we're in production on Volume 3 as well. So yeah, it's it was all about pivoting and seeing like where we did well. We had done well on Kickstarter in the past, but I was trying to launch these books on Amazon. We were trying to launch like very small books instead of these big books, and like instead of putting all of our marketing muscle behind a few big launches a year, we're trying to separate it and do a bunch of small launches a year, and like that just doesn't work for us. Like we have to put the passion behind the thing. And when we finally did the Kickstarter in January, what people told us was like, oh, I never looked at these books before because like we didn't seem that passionate about it, but now like I see the passion behind your work, so like I'm going to check it out now. And so, instead of spending like a week on each launch over the course of like 2 months, I spent like 2 weeks and just like obliterated like my social media, and then I like pulled back, and like I'm not like doing a lot of publicity for them anymore. And so I have found that like doing these big these like scattershot book launches don't work for me. What works for me is like really like building up and building up and building up to these like really big grand book launches every quarter, kind of like a fashion designer would do. So yeah, that's sort of how we turned it around. As far as like what I learned, though, which I think was the second part of your question, I learned that you cannot tie your self-worth to your success or failure. So as entrepreneurs or as writers, we are almost always like the bastard stepchild of like of any industry, because when you're any entrepreneurial journey, whether it's writing or opening a car dealership or like whatever, pretty much we go into corporate America and we're like, I don't like how this is. I think it should be this way. And everyone says, just follow the program, follow the program, follow the program. And we say, no, we're not going to do that. Not going to do that. We're going to do it like our way. And so we're like setting ourselves apart from like most people already. And like we're also already kind of crazy and like alone. So as we have success, it's very easy for us to, or very appealing for people to take that success and like tie their self-worth to it. But like, see, I told you it was going to go well. See, I told you I have value. I told you I have value. The problem with that is at some point you will plateau. Now, it might be at 40 or 60 or 80. Let's say it's on 0 to 100 scales. So like it might be at 10, it might be at 20, it might be at 30. You may be able to push from 30 to 40 or 50 or 60 afterwards. But like at some point you will plateau. Whether it's forever or for just the time being. But like most people like can't break 80 or 90 or like certainly not like 95. Like if 100 is like Neil Gaiman, then like if you can hit 50 or 60, you probably can have a pretty good career. But the problem is when you plateau, that sort of becomes your new normal. And so it's not like if you go from 0 to 50 and then 50 to 40, you're like, oh, wow, I'm still at 40. Mm-hmm. You always think, oh, well, I'm at 50. This is where I'm always going to be forever. And when you have a bad book launch, like things don't go your way, or, you know, you have a bad launch, or you have a bad week, or like you get a bad email about like a negative review or something, you start second guessing yourself. And when you start and that real fun ride you took up with your self-worth, like you come crashing down. And that's what happened to me, at least, where, you know, I felt good. I felt pretty good about previous launches, and I put a bunch of money, like a lot of, like just so much money into these book launches. And when they weren't going well, like this was going to be my life. This was going to be my like I was planning to literally like make the Amazon book launches and the book thing like my career. That was what I was doing. And so when I couldn't do that, didn't do that, it broke me. It broke me. Like it and I had to really learn how to exist in a world where like I was okay with some books would hit really big and some books would hit smaller, and X, Y, and Z would happen, and whatever it is, I needed to be okay with that. It's not always going to be uphill. And so I had to learn to sort of say, I am not a success or failure. I am a person who has succeeded in this and failed at this. And I'm also a writer and a husband and a dog owner and a homeowner and a person who likes reading and a son and a brother. And, you know, if any of these things were taken away, I would still be a whole person. But in the same way, like if I was a success or failure at something, it doesn't really relate to anything else, and that my self-worth is intrinsic to being alive and just like existing in the world. And I have it just like Steve Jobs has it, and just like the homeless person next to me has it. And one thing that I really learned this year was like usually success and failure are happening at the same time. Success in one thing usually means failure in another thing. And so you really just have to I've really just had to learn like to take it all, not in stride, but as a thing that exists outside of myself as a human.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for saying all of that. It's so hard to remember who we are when we consume ourselves in that one thing that we're hoping to be successful at, and we forget our identity. And so that's huge. And I know for me personally, I've been, I was dealing with that for a few years. Once I left the military, I was like, who am I now? I didn't know who I was anymore. So that is just, yeah, that's just like really hit me in the heart. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's so neat. We all need to hear that.
Yeah, of course. And it's true that like that's one of the problems is like once we find an identity, we tack all of ourselves to it. So we're like, well, like who am I? Like who am I? Now I'm a writer. And like that's like who now if I better I'm not having a success as a writer. So like now who am I? Now who am I? And one of the things that really helped me was just trying to tack myself to as many things as possible. So like I am a writer, but I am also a swimmer. I'm not a swimmer, but like I'm also X, Y, and Z other things. And like I have all of this other stuff that I can offer. And a writer is a part of it.
Right.
But any job, God, the military must be so much because like the military is like they demand so much of you, right?
Right.
So yeah, I could imagine that like when you leave the military, you're like, what do it's not, I have nothing. I got all of the stuff that like they expected so much of me. And now like it's gone. And now I have to fill all of it back up again.
Exactly. Yeah. But like you, I had to remember that I was still a wife and a mother and a dog owner. And there was so much more of me other than just that thing that I felt was all of me. So it is.
Yeah, so we had to surrender a dog yesterday who didn't work out. We had her for a month, and it's been a really tough weekend. But what I was really surprised at was, we only had her a month, with 30 to 35 days, and she's been at the rescue getting additional training, and we're trying to work through her issues for the past week. So really had her basically a month. And I was just surprised at how much like my heart opened in a whole nother chamber for a whole nother thing. And so what that really taught me is however sad it's been, and it's been very sad, like 24 hours, not 12 or 14 hours since we had to deal with that. But what it taught was like, your heart is never whole. Like it's never like a thing. Like there's always more.
Right.
That you can put in there. That is always more that it can expand to. And I was a couple of weeks ago we were having this problem, right? Because it's not like oh well, one day she was here, one day she was gone. Like she's been kind of a problem, and we didn't know what to do with her a couple of weeks ago. And I was writing sort of every 6 months I kind of write like, and this is what I'm grateful for email to my followers, and I put her in there, and I was like, we got this new dog. And then like the day that I was going to send the email, this trainer came in. It's the first time that they were like, you have to get rid of this dog. And we were like, we're not going to get rid of this dog. But like, we knew that theoretically we might have to, and send us sort of on this whole whirlwind thing to figure out what, like how we could keep this dog. And I went back to my email and I was like, I've got to take this thing out of my email because like, what if I don't have this dog? But as I was sitting there looking at the pictures of her that I put in the email, I was like, honestly, like even if we lose this dog, I'm still grateful for the time that we had with her. I'm still grateful that it opened my heart in another way. I'm grateful that she was in my life in the way that she was in my life. And now I've been thinking about that a lot for the last, evening and how like painful it was and how I still would love, I'm still like, I still, even though I knew we made the right decision, it's still like very, very painful to think about. And just how a thing can happen and you don't even like, it's a lightning bolt. Like we didn't even know her like in May. And now like we're at the same place as we were in May. We're not the same humans that we were in May. And so all of those things that happen, the bad and the good and the bad and the very bad and the awful and the terrible and the shitty and all of the, all of the bad stuff, which seems like these days just so much more bad. Like they all inform the thing that we're going to do. And just because you give something else. So there's this thing in like, especially in American culture, that is like, if you give up, you're a failure. Like if you stop doing something, it's because you failed, and like winners never give up. And like, it's the biggest load of horse crap I've ever heard, because the most successful people that I've ever met are the biggest quitters I've ever met. Like they will quit stuff like in a snap of a finger. They will try something, and if a week later it's not working, and they'll be like, this doesn't feel good. Like I'm out. Like they will try partnerships, and they will all the time be like, yeah, this isn't working out. Like they will launch businesses that fail, and like in a year or two, they're gone. But for some reason, when we give up on something, it's seen as a failure, when all of the things that we've done are like that we've done during that time have helped us grow and opened our heart and our mind, and it's stuff we can bring to the next thing. But also, you can always go back. Like if you regret it, you could always go back to do it again. Like it's not like, oh, well, I was a writer and now I have this day job and like I literally can never write again. Like none of those things are true. I had a podcast a long time ago that I gave up, and I just brought it back a year ago because I missed it. Yeah. And I might give it up again, or I might move another thing, or I did these virtual summits earlier this year, and like I was like, I liked them, but like I don't know enough to like put a lot of energy into doing another one. And there's all these things that like it helps you grow as a human, and you still get that experience. Like if you go to Italy and you come back from Italy, like you still have the experience of being there. You didn't fail like being in Italy. Like you just you didn't fail being in the military, or like getting your college degree. All of these things are things that like are finite parts of our lives. But like we always have the experiences, and like unless you are like dishonorably discharged or something, you can go back to the military. Like you can go back to college and get a master's degree. You can go back and do all of these things again if you regret them. And the other nice thing about like, so if one of the things I learned about failure was like, oh, I know how to get back. Yeah. Like when I fell, I was like, I know how to get back. Like, I just have to go back to these successful projects. And like, I know how to do it. And like, I just replicated it. And it really taught me like, oh yeah, like I do have the skills to like do it again. Like I have those skills, they're there. I just hadn't used it for a minute. And now I'm using them again. And like, look at what I've done in this year and how different it is from like other things that I've done. And it's been really nice to be like, oh, I was at level 60. And even though I fell back down to level 30, I still had all the skills that I learned from being at level 60. And I just had to go back to basic principles, and like, I got them back again.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm so glad that you said that, because it isn't. Yeah, we learn so much from our failures and quitting, but we can always go back to it, and we learn how to be better at it. So yeah, it doesn't mean that you are a quitter, or even that it's a bad thing to be a quitter. You'll go back to it, and it's just all about finding our passion again.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about like I'm a fantasy writer, but I've written dystopian and I've written like other genres, and like I didn't quit dystopian because now I write fantasy. It's just like I know how to write that thing. I learned the thing that I love the most,
right.
And I'm moving towards like that part of it, but the other skills are there. And I think that we like make fun or like bash people who in their 20s like move jobs or move careers or do all that stuff, and we call them like lazy or quitters. Or I'm like, dude, they're young. Like this is the time that they should be able to like do 100 jobs, because like they have no money. So like by the time they hit 30 and responsibility, like they're gonna need to like have a thing. And might as well. When I was young, I just saw every older person that I knew so filled with regret of like, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done this other thing. And I wish I had done that thing. And I always would tell my dad, is like, I don't know what I want to do, but like I just don't want to have regret at the end of it. And luckily my wife was wonderful, is wonderful, and like I was able to make some money while in my 20s, but I was very determined to like never have a regret of trying a thing. So because when I got to my 40, like the thing that every single person that I knew, successful or not, like it ate at them. It ate at them. It ate them up that they didn't like try to write that book in their 20s, or they didn't like go travel for a year and like live in Spain, or like it ate them up and like consumed them. It felt like it like consumed them every single day. And I was like, well, so like I might not make it to 40, but like if I make it to 40, I'm probably going to live to 80. And like that's as much time as I've lived, like that I just have to regret the things that I did. And of course, like you can go back and do those things at 40. And I've seen so many successful people that like wrote books in their 50s or did all this stuff. And like but man, it seemed to eat them away inside. And I did not want that. And it's allowed me to do all of the things that like I've been able to do, but it's also been able to have me like blow up 4 companies I've had partners with blew up in my face, like projects that I've had that like failed. And like you see the success out of that, but like if you don't just do the work, like you're never going to get the success because the failure is just baked in. Like for every one of these like great projects that I've had 10 that like just blew up in my face.
No, yeah, you're so right. We do. There's a lot. Well, I'm my gosh, I'm going to be 45, and there there are some things that I regret not doing. So I think this is the time to go ahead and go for it. But you're right. There's a lot of people out there that are just like, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. And I held several jobs in my 20s because that was just we just had to find that thing. And get that experience. So there's nothing wrong with that.
And see what you like and see what you don't like, and be
Yeah.
able to like write that book and see like, oh, that's not for me. Or there's nothing better than like having people love your work is good, but but trying something and being like, oh, I hate that, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or like, oh, I really love that. Like, I never thought I would write novels or comics. I never thought that I would like that movies and TV would be on the back burner because of something else. I never thought that I would enjoy like negotiating contracts or any of the stuff that I enjoy. But like, I was able to be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to draw books. I want to just write them. Oh, I don't want to like do X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, I really like doing bookmark. All of these things, when you try them, you sort of have these buckets of like, yep, not for me. Yes, for me. And all of those things that you try, even if you could have been good at them or been like really good at them or great at them, sometimes they're just not for you, and you don't know until you try. And I've been very blessed that I've been able to write a lot of books in a lot of genres and done a lot of writing before I found the kind of core things that I really love and that other people love that I do.
That's exciting. That is, yeah, it's amazing because yes, you're right. You have to try it in order for you to figure out if you like it or not. And then now look, I mean, you have a plethora of books out there that all came from your heart and your passion. So it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
It's so exciting. Gosh, yeah, thank you so much, Russell, for sharing all of this. I know I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot from this. And you guys need to go to russellnohelty.com. He's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I will put this in the show notes and in the podcast guide. I do have one every month, and we showcase all of our guests. So I can't wait for you to follow him, get one of these books. I know I'm absolutely intrigued, and I've never been into those kind of books, but I'm looking at them right now in the background. I'm like, oh yeah, I want that one. It looks so cool. So congratulations on all your failures and successes, because I think this is where it's gotten you now. And so you're much better for it.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, of course. Of course. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best. I can't wait to see what else you come up with next.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thank you for listening to the True Sweet High podcast, created and founded by your host, Annette, the founder of A Wild Ride Call Life. Also, a big thank you to all of our sponsors for each and every episode that is aired. We have so much support from them and all of our listeners. You can find more information at www.awildridecalllife.com.